Yo, what's up? We have another news drop, and this is the summary of the news from the last 3 days. It was a lot of posting done by Darkflow, also of the helpers, regarding additional content for the upcoming update, and also, very interestingly, regarding the results of the test server run, because this test server run showed us the new AI behavior, and there are many really nice improvements. So let's talk about the graphical improvements first, because these are a really good aspect of Enlisted. Because A, the person responsible for them is actually productive and doing good work. And B, it's something that every player profits from, no matter how strong your computer is. So no matter if you're on low or high tier gear, you will always have better graphics after every single of these graphical updates. So first of all, the big summary is that the graphics are improved a bit and also proportionally optimized, meaning you will, after this update drops, sadly not this week anymore, but likely somewhere Tuesday, Wednesday next week. After it drops, you will experience better graphics without any FPS loss, because as I already said, every single improvement also comes with optimizations, so the graphics are calculated more efficiently. Now, first thing, and here's a little hidden aspect I think involved. As you can see, this is the before machine gun 34, and this is the after picture, and we see less reflections and less light scattering and reflective effects. Now, most people, also me myself included, would say the left picture looks better because it's just more flashy. Now, Darkflow says that it's more realistic if it has less light reflection because the surface is rougher. Now, if that's the case, it's true. I honestly don't know how rough the surface of an MG34 was. And I have to say I would rather have it look like before. Because it looks just amazing if you have all of these cool reflections, especially on the barrel itself. But there are two advantages I would say to this. A, if this is truly the case that this metal was quite rough, then yeah, it looks more realistic. But B, it's much more efficient to have these graphics than these, because if the computer doesn't have to calculate any reflections on these rough surfaces, you're gonna have a much better FPS performance, especially if you keep in mind that there are many rough surfaces possibly. For example, tanks. If tanks don't need to calculate reflections, well, that makes a lot of things less to be calculated on the battlefield. So yeah, this can be quite good, but there are also obviously weapons that have shiny surfaces and they will still be featuring nice reflections. So this is the first aspect. Second aspect, and this is something that I've already seen used 1.5 years ago, the illumination effects in Enlisted get constantly reworked because they are very hard to do, especially if you want to have them efficiently done. And here I would say the before effect looks more realistic, and the after effect basically has more light, which is good, but you see this bluish effect. Yeah, I don't think a black, brown stone mass would have this dark blue light shadow effect. I think it would have, it would look more like this. So I would say personally the optimal outcome would be something in between, where you have more light, but there's still more like darkness instead of this bluishness. But still, these improved global illumination effects mean in the end that you have less completely dark areas. Especially this one cave on the Manda Trail map in the Pacific, or all of those Moscow houses, like these barracks, which have lots of black corners where people can hide, or could hide, now they can't anymore. So yeah, overall this is better for gameplay. It looks less realistic, but still I guess it's fine. Also the water looks quite nice with the light reflection, so yeah. Well, and many people had issues trying to find the difference. Yeah, try to find the difference here. And no, the snowflake doesn't count because this is one picture is taken later, one picture is taken earlier. I had to look at this like for 1 minute to find any differences, and this basically a bit more, it's more precise. Yeah, for example, if you look at here the roof, this is rougher. The edges are literally rougher, and here you have more precision, as if it had calculated more pixels. And here, if you look at the wood also has more details and looks more realistic. So yeah, this is quite the improvement overall, but still. Now, these little improvements are not too spectacular, but having these types of improvements twice per year, or sometimes even 3 times, means the game looks better and better and better over time, which is something amazing and exactly what we need. Beyond that, we have another one improvement for graphics, and it is, yes, something no one expected. It's literally tracks improvement. Doesn't sound spectacular, but here's the thing. These tracks, I think, were added together with the merge or shortly after the merge. Before that, we didn't have these cool tracks, and they make a huge difference. Because A, they make everything look actually realistic. Because whenever you have a game and there are tanks driving around, and you don't see any tracks, especially not in the snow, it just looks cheap and it destroys the immersion. It just, like, you can afford some mistakes, but you cannot afford something like that. Having tracks is a great step towards more realism, and what's promised here now is that the tracks are gonna look different and be deeper and have a different shape depending on what type of vehicle you have. So whether you have a vehicle with tracks or with wheels. Now, this is quite good. Also, it actually gives you strategic advantages. For example, if you're playing alone and you don't have any communication with your team, and you see while playing infantry that there are already tracks on the map, and where tanks were driving, you can deduce, alright, tanks were driving here from my team, and then you see, alright, did they survive driving this way or not? And then you might know, oh, I'd rather avoid this way, I'd rather go the other way. Or if you're somehow behind enemy lines or flanking and you find some tracks, it also can give you some good information. Also, tracks can make it easier to hide anti-tank mines. And since, for example, the enemy who will see his own team's tracks and thinks, oh, a tank drove over here, so this must be safe, and you drop an anti-tank mine exactly on top of the somewhere where into the shadow area in the tracks, yeah, he's gonna 100% die. So these tracks offer up some really cool, nice maneuvers. So this is quite cool. And in the least, like, even if you don't take any other information from that, simply knowing where tanks are actually driving around and where not is helpful enough, because sometimes maps don't have distinct, clear, narrow paths for tanks. Sometimes they can choose where they want to drive on a vast, broad field. And then you can see, alright, how do other tankers drive and learn from that and possibly find new ways. Because I constantly see, especially on the complicated maps, some new tracks since in the last months. And I see, oh, people are driving here, I wouldn't have expected that. Or for example, if you have something with very complicated terrain and you think, alright, a tank can't drive successfully through this area, but you see tracks going over it and ending somewhere far beyond, and you see, oh, okay, this must be an area where I can succeed with a tank. And then you see, oh, okay, maybe I can try it out myself. So yeah, this is quite cool and comfy. And there's some noobs complaining, yep, I won't name any names, about how Darkflow shouldn't waste time on that and instead do other things. Now, here's the thing. The person working on graphics is a specialized software developer who doesn't work on other things. Because normal software developers can't work on graphics. You need to spend a lot of time to get into it. So, and you won't waste someone who can do that on some other bullshit work. So, if the next update is delayed, it's not that person's fault, it's the other people's fault, because this person works on other things, for example, graphic optimization. Yes, so this literally doesn't postpone the release of the update. Now, regarding the AI behavior, here's the interesting thing. The test server showed this besides the little new content, there's not much. It showed us some really nice things. First of all, your bots, so bots means the soldiers in your own teams and in the other players' squads, are slower when it comes to reaction and short range. Now this means if you're invading an area, like an objective, a house, or the enemy bots are invading an area, your objective, they won't instantly start killing you. They are not as fast as before, so it's more realistic you can actually kill them. Because the worst thing is if you get into an objective and there are 6 or 7 bots hidden and they instantly start shooting you and you don't have any chance to survive. Now this would be stupid, so they gotta slow down a bit. Regarding the long range behavior, it's either the same or it's a bit better to compensate. That it's not clear, but yeah, it's overall, I would say, more realistic. Now, so bots are overall more dangerous on long range, especially if you give them good weapons and rifles, because they have actually good aim, unlike most players. And then on short range though, they still have a strength, and it's the melee strength, because they can successfully melee you. I noticed it myself in the last weeks that bots, at first I thought it was players, but it could have been actually bots that, well, obviously the update wasn't released again, but I guess bots were in general quite good in melee recently, because I got very often melee, much more often than usual. So yeah, bots that are strong at melee is quite cool. Also makes them interesting to play, I guess, because very few people actually try to bayonet charge into enemies. I personally always do it, since it's the, well, most reasonable way to get to rush an objective. Because, well, if you just rush straight in and you open the door and you just get one free kill this way. Yeah, you have the half of a second delay until you switch to your weapon, but still I try to have the free kill and possibly get killed than having no free kill and yeah, whatever. So yeah. And very importantly, bots behave better now, or with the upcoming update, when it comes to objectives. So they are smarter at capping, meaning they actually cap more often, and smarter at defending, and they actually stay closer to the objective so they can actually affect it. Because very often bots were going to the objective, but then they suddenly stopped behind the objective and didn't do anything. Or there were some around the objective, but also didn't behave in a helpful way. But now this is going to change. So yeah, this is great too. And then when it comes to pure AI, meaning AI teammates, who are put into games when not enough real players are in the game, they also got some completely new abilities. Now, first of all, the general question, how do you identify or distinguish an AI player from a real human player? There are indirect ways, and they work basically by looking at how do they behave, how many points do they get, are they using vehicles or not, because this is something they didn't do before, but now you can't even use that. But there's one absolutely straightforward way to identify AI, and it's by looking at how many real players there are in the beginning of the game. Because if the game, like in the beginning after the screen loads and you load into the map, and you look at the battle score and you see, alright, your team has 7 players, the enemy team has 8 players. When the game starts, once you spawn into the map itself, and can use your soldiers, this is when the game starts filling up the missing slots or the open slots with AI. And if you just look at the last second before the game actually starts or the match starts, how many players there are in both teams, you will exactly know how many of them are bots. Keep in mind though that quite often players are also thrown into the game while it's going on, even in the first seconds, so not all of them must be AI. Also, if people connect to a game later, they remove an AI player, an AI bot, and then put in a real player. So yeah, that's not perfectly one-to-one. But also, since many players leave the game after a while, this can make the math a bit more complicated. But the real players who left the game at the beginning of the game, most likely because they didn't like the map or the game mode, their names get grayed out, so you can see it this way too. Now, how did the AI get improved now? Well, very simple. First of all, the AI can now call artillery strikes, which is, yeah, I hope it only does it when the artillery strike is open for too long. I guess that's how it was coded. So it's incentivizes you to call artillery strikes quickly. So I guess it's something like a 5-second timer, and if no real player called it to strike, the eye calls one. And it seems to be quite reasonable and precise with that, so I guess it just calls it on the point or behind the point, depending on whether the point is a house or not. And also the AI is now building more rallies, significantly more, which is good because AI building rallies is already like 1.5-year-old news. But it only builds only 1 to 2 bots maximum build AI build rallies, and even then not for every objective. They build them rarely. Now this doesn't help at all. It is stupid, especially if you're an attacking player where you need rallies the most and where you get them the least. So it is just bad. And now apparently rallies become more prevalent, which is extremely good. I said the biggest problem of Enlisted is that A, rallies are not built, and B, that you can't pick maps. Once these two problems are solved, Enlisted will become a much more fun to play game and much more successful around the world. So this is exactly where the game needs to be improved. And the last biggest surprise is that AI can use tanks now. Now, in so far it also makes sense that tracks got improved, as it a little bit fitting, because so far only real players could use tanks, and now the AI also uses them. Though don't be afraid, it doesn't pick the strongest tanks it can. It seems from a test server picks medium tanks, so medium relative to the power level or the BR you're playing. So if you're playing BF5, the AI won't pick King Tigers, it likely won't pick something like Panthers. And if you're playing mid BR, it won't pick KV1s or T34s, but the T50 maybe or T28. So that's quite good. Also, it plays them quite aggressively, so it doesn't gray zone, it just drives quite close to the action, making it quite easy to blow up, but also interesting because it engages the real players more, so this is nice. And it's not too dangerous, so you don't have to be afraid. Yeah. So yeah, this is quite cool. Now the only downside I see with that is if real humans want to pick a tank, but the AI already picked one, and you now have less tank slots. Yeah, now we have to still see how it exactly works out in real games. So far it's clear that the AI only takes 1 tank slots and never 2. So both teams will have maximum 1 slot taken by the AI. And I think if players take 2 tank slots right from the beginning of the game, they still, if the AI won't take it away from them. And you have enough time, but I think it's also with a timer coded that if real human players don't take tanks quick enough, then the AI takes them. But yeah, still quite cool, interesting. And don't forget the thing that I always seem to forget during games. If you see an enemy tank, you can click X on the tank, and then your bots will try to blow it up. Especially with TNT packs if they have it. I think they also might throw Molotovs, and they also use anti-tank rifles and Panzerfaust and so on. And they're quite precise. So this is a very comfy and easy way to blow up tanks. I always forget it myself, so you will basically never see me doing it in my own games. But I'm getting reminded of that quite often when I play myself a tank, and then suddenly 3-4 TNT packs fly instantly at me, and I know, right, this is, these are bots. Alright? That's it. Now, very comfy news. And we're gonna have the update, I'm very, like 99% sure next week. Like beginning of next week. And somewhere around that, I'm also gonna continue the soldier and squad class guides. I'm not sure which one yet. Write in the comments which one you want. So far I think about either APCs or mortars or, well, what else? Yeah. Like there are some squad types that aren't that interesting. For example, anti-tank gunners. There's not much to say about them. Engineers I already did, though I will do an updated guide, I guess in the next months. Tanks I also going to do an updated guide. Planes I also will do one. But I never did one on APCs or mortar squad, so yeah, just tell me what you like the most. I also wanted to do one on medics, though there's also not that much to say about them. Also, medics got nerfed regarding experience gain. So you get only 25% experience now for healing, which is bad. Yes, it's very bad. And medics, yeah, but I think I also might do medics in the future, but I need to actually get footage because I never play medics, so yeah. I have to actively put med squads in my lineups. And for most nations, I never played medics, so it's actually quite a lot of work and takes a while until I get enough footage from them, so yeah. So tell me most likely whether you like APCs or mortar squads, and then I'm gonna do you a guide for them. So make sure you like and subscribe and share this with your nerd friends, so we get more Enlisted players, because Enlisted is getting better and better. And until very soon.